What are your main takeaways from his little press tour he's done over the last few days here?
Yeah, so just in, I guess, chronological order, he jumps on the Sabres broadcast midweek in the intermission with Brendan Parker. We had a huge reaction show to that on Barn Burner. I think it was Boomer going off for an hour was what it was labeled, or
it was
something
fantastic.
Like that.
It was great.
Well, it was not boring, and we're in the business of entertaining. But I think listening to Boomer, I felt like he spoke on behalf of the fan base that I think felt a little bit insulted by that dialogue. And part of me is wondering, A, if internally they do believe that all the things Don Maloney are saying is actually what they're planning on doing. B, I wonder why they let him speak to the media. He's not good at it. He's probably good at a lot of things, but it seems like, putting your foot in a bear trap, it's not going to go well. Like, why, when your team's in 32nd, if you know he's going to say things like that, let him on TV? Or if he is, at least give him a disclaimer that says, hey, if we're in last in a month, we've got the option to spin some veterans into younger assets. And they didn't play that card at all. He basically said, we're winners. Look at all this winning we've done. Look at all this culture. The only problem is that they haven't won squat. I mean, they have one win beyond the first round in the last 20 years. Like, it's appalling.
Since 1990, they've been past game 5 of round 2 once, and it was 2004.
Yeah, so I don't know what Don is suggesting all this winning culture is. Like, did the guys get along and win more games than they should have last year? Absolutely. Does it look to be sustainable? No. Did you probably chalk up too much of goalie and good bounces into the culture bucket?
100%.
You probably did. And maybe we're all wrong and they reel off 8 in a row, but Don didn't even give themselves the wiggle out spot of, if things don't go our way, there's a lot of great options for us moving forward. Like, he didn't even give himself the easy out. And then moving forward chronologically, he does the Eric Francis puff piece, which puff piece is what I mean by Eric's perspective. But like, hey, Don, why don't you go clarify some of those things you said that didn't go over well, that the organization got a lot of phone calls about and texts about and a lot of reaction to. And maybe just like make sure that fans are understanding what you're saying. And it felt like more of a double down than any sort of walking back of anything when I read the 2-parter from Eric Francis. And
Francis said on 960 that he asked Don, hey, do you want to back up any of the comments you had or tell him a little bit differently? He told him flat out, no, like I'm happy with what I said on Wednesday.
So he thinks this is a winning culture and a place that really incubates young players because of all the winning they're doing.
And
they've missed the playoffs 3 years in a row.
Yeah. That's terrifying. If you're a Calgary Flames fan, that's scary. That's a scary thought.
Yeah. And honestly, like, I'm not going to tell people how to do their jobs, but this was a firestorm the Flames totally could have avoided. There was 100%. No need to put the Poho in front of a camera. I remember the press conference after Brad Treliving left, and they had to fire Daryl and it was like, yeah, that's probably not the way they should approach this. And yet there he was again on a coast-to-coast broadcast in the sense of like fans watching all over. If you got the package, you could see it. And it didn't inspire confidence in the fan base about this front office. And it also just reminded us that as he's stammering through words and trying to stay cool, this isn't what he's good at. This is not what he's cut out to do. And even if he wants to do this, you've got an arm of the company that's called communications, public relations, etc. Don't let him. It's only hurting you, right?
100%. One thing I'm curious about, and I want to get your thoughts on this, is how much of what Don Maloney said was Don's actual thoughts and how much of it was him just speaking on behalf of ownership? Because it felt like a lot of his comments were things that we've heard about Calgary Flames ownership and their thoughts on team building.
Well, we don't ever hear from Flames ownership, and that's the owner's right, because he owns it.
It's all secondhand. Yeah.
Which means we don't hear from the ownership. I mean, we can guess what Murray Edwards thinks or feels. We never hear. And so I would expect that if he's the president of your hockey operations, he's got a large voice, but I start to wonder if there isn't a bit of a discourse between a camp that says, if you look at the assets we have already in the system and you look at the assets we could sell for picks, Like, you could be sitting on 4 to 5 first rounders the next 2 years.
Yep.
And I don't honestly, like, this great culture winning nonsense that he's spewing in 3 or 4 years, who is that? Like, Nazem Kadri is not going to be a great hockey player until he's 50. At some point, he's going to age. He's going to be 36 next year.
Yep.
Do you want to get caught holding the bag for cultural reasons? That would seem really, really short-sighted. And he keeps talking about a long-term plan, but the plan doesn't acknowledge that, like, hey, everything you say you have has you in 32nd. And you might graduate a Gridden or a Bristevich, and you're going to move part ways likely with Rasmus Anderson. Like, why do you think you're in the middle of the pack next year?
I have no idea. I literally have no idea. That's one of the most mind-numbing parts about this whole situation, is that everybody in the hockey universe can tell that the Calgary Flames, they desperately need to rebuild. They definitely need to trade out veterans and go in a different direction. It seems like the only people in the hockey world that don't agree with them are the people at the Saddle Dome, which is just, it's so frustrating from a fan's perspective.
And I think they do have a very legitimate plan B. I don't think they're ready to go public with it. And that's why I wondered why they let him go on TV. Because if you have a plan B, but you don't want to say it out loud for fear of losing the room or ruffling feathers amongst the veterans that signed here as free agents to win now, okay, then just don't do it. Just say, thanks, guys. Why don't we chat closer to Christmas?
Mm-hmm.
And so I am very curious about this long-term vision that hasn't changed at all when, you know, he's saying it's not fantasy hockey, it's not this, it's not that. Well, you know what it is? The standings tell you what you are, and you're awful. You're the worst team in the league. And maybe you finish 28th or 29th, or you get on a heater and finish 24th or 25th. But Don, do you think long-term you're better if you draft between 8 and 12 this year or in the top 3? And does that sound like a long-term decision that would help you? Like, this is not that complicated.
No,
He's not inspired a lot of confidence. And now people are saying, like, how did you get this job? Where did he come from? What does he know about winning? And, you know, it shouldn't be about that. It should be a spot that we're not talking about that, you know, all you have to do is add the one disclaimer, you know, if we're in a spot heading into the deadline, like we are now in the standings, we always have the ability to spin veteran players into young assets. One sentence. And none of this is a firestorm.
Yeah.
But it felt like more of a doubling down, the piece that Francis did with him. And I think Eric kind of framed it properly. He was just sort of saying, look, in the last zillion years, when you're X number of points out of a playoff spot on this date, you're statistically cooked. And yet, here's the POHO of the Flames. So if the piece was supposed to help rehabilitate people's confidence in Don Maloney or to give Don the opportunity to clarify anything, both were a failure.
Yeah, it got considerably worse. The one comment you mentioned, it was, you know, this isn't fantasy hockey where we can just get a top pick and a generational player and automatically become successful. But it's like, you know, are the Colorado Avalanche in fantasy land? Are the Pittsburgh Penguins in fantasy land? Are the Chicago Blackhawks? Like, there's so many examples. So many examples of good teams that have won Stanley Cups and have come close to winning Stanley Cups that have done just that, have bottomed out and got that elite talent. But for some reason, he thinks that the Calgary Flames are smarter than everybody else in the league and they can go about it in a different way.
And I will say this, like, he seems to have this all or nothing philosophy. And maybe that's what rebuild means to them, that it's down to the studs. But, like, I'm sorry. You've got 5 years left of Weegar. You've got 5 years left of Huberdeau. You've got Backlund for the next 2 after this one. You're not moving those guys.
No.
And, like, maybe, you know, theoretically you could move Weegar, but, like, no one's saying you have to trade those 3. Like, do you need more veterans than that?
And that's
like we're not saying it's to the studs. What we're saying is Nazem Kadri will get you a pile of assets. Blake Coleman will get you a pile of assets. Rasmus Anderson will get you a pile of assets. You have too many wingers. Hello. Joel Farabee could get you some more assets. And maybe a guy like Joel Hanley for a late pick at the deadline could help a team that needs a little depth on the blue line. Like, that's not taking it to the studs.
No,
but this notion that, like, oh, we don't want to get rid of Kadri, we just want to keep them. It's like, can I introduce you to what an aging curve is? And can you show me a player that got better from age 35 to 38? Because last year was the career year at 35. He's 38 when the contract's done. He can be all the right intangible stuff. Great. But compare that, this declining asset, at some point, he will not be as good as he's been. And you could argue it's happening already. He's not going to be anywhere close to that 34 goal pace at this juncture. He's just not. He's halfway there. And like he's on pace for less than 20, I believe.
Yeah.
And so if you don't see the advantage of trading a Kadri and getting a first or two, and how that could help you long-term versus a declining asset where maybe he wants out and you're left holding the bag because he's not worth his contract anymore, it's just incredibly short-sighted. And I'm sure Don Maloney's good at a lot of things in that office, but trying to explain to fans what the hell that front office is doing is not something he's good at. And if they want to get absolutely battered in the media with right hooks, jabs, and uppercuts, keep trotting them out there. Otherwise, if you don't like it, stop doing it.
One more thing before we head out here, because we're getting close to game time. What do you think this means for Craig Conroy moving forward? I mean, they don't put him out to do any sort of media, even though he's way better at it than Don Maloney.
He's very good at it. Yeah.
He's on the final year of his contract. You know, Don Maloney did not really give him much of a vote of confidence in the Francis article today. Like, what do you see happening?
It wasn't it didn't lead me to believe that. Like, he said a lot of complimentary things. He said, we're not going to talk about the process. That's what teams should do. If you allow yourself,
he left things up in the air, though. That's kind of the point I think I would make.
Well, it's not done, so of course it's up in the air. But yeah, if there was an opportunity for a vote of confidence, I suppose it was there. But if you're not going to negotiate through the media, you just don't comment on it. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if they want to extend him, and he wants to get extended, but he thinks the going rate for a GM might be this, or maybe it's I'd like to do some tweaks here or there, or maybe it's just not front burner. They're going to say, it's not an item of note right now. It's a big, like Pat Verbeek's in his walk year. Is there any noise about him not being re-signed?
No, and
no.
He's done a fantastic job, and the team's on the uprise. That's the issue. Then the Flames go in a different direction.
But a year ago, you might have said like it's their second or third rebuild in a row. Like, it's not going to work for them. Like, the original core they drafted isn't the guys carrying the mail now. So, it's a noisy market because it's the top team in a city of 1.5 million people. Yeah. The Anaheim Ducks might crack the top 10 sports teams in LA. Might. It's not front page stuff. They don't have people doing what we're doing with multiple shows talking about one team around the clock. And so you're going to get that in the Canadian market. But I don't know that it's a problem for Craig Conroy, although I do start to wonder if Craig Conroy is trying to convert some other people on the staff into a vision that he knows is the right way to turn this team into a contender, not what Don Maloney is calling winning, which is actually incredibly mediocre to below average.
Yep. 100%. Do you think there's any part of Conroy that's thinking to himself, I don't know if I can do this for another 3 years?
He's aging like Obama, like those presidents. The years look like 5 at a time. But it's a big job. It's a hard job. It's not an easy owner to deal with in terms of the number of check-ins from the conversations I have that held that post earlier. People that were there, they said, it's a very non-traditional amount of communication that's required. And none of that's new to Craig. He's been around since he retired in the org. But it feels like he's started to get the ball rolling on building a contender. He's had 2 really good draft classes in a row. And so I don't worry about him not being here or like looking for other options so much as I just think it's really hard sometimes for people to get their market value in Calgary working for this ownership group.
Hey buddies, thanks for watching. We appreciate it. Also, if you could throw in a like and subscribe, it does help us out with what it is we are doing. And check out more at flamesnation.ca.